The camera will start and I'll give you a signal. Okay.
Midnight at the Oasis, send your camel to bed.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Why don't you just go ahead, and I'll pick it up and maybe stop you in a couple of places as you go. So you just go ahead.
Just turn to the house.
Yeah.
I'll go to the web vehicle.
Okay. Just go ahead. Pick up wherever I can.
That's the ball we'll sail through real soon. Kick up a little dust.
What you are watching is news. There are no headlines, no written words, no reporters. But as surely as the pen leaves a record of note, so too the camera tells a story of its own.
Go back over
You are seeing a story through the eyes of a news film cameraman. He does not show us reality, merely his reflection of reality, filled with the insights and shortcomings of the camera and the man. Tonight on Spectrum, we take you behind the story for a glimpse at the man who makes the images that helps outline our world.
Hello, I'm Bob Dotson. You know, for most of us, television is our window on the world. And one of the men who paints some of the better pictures for television is WKY-TV News chief photographer Darrell Barton. And this week, Darrell Barton has been named the National News Film Cameraman of the Year. We thought it might be appropriate to take a look at some of his film and to show the audience something about the man behind the camera.
The storm struck more savagely and without warning. A trailer park on the city's southwest side was nearly destroyed and 2 infants were killed. Even while tornadoes continued to threaten the area, police and firemen searched for survivors. When the storm struck, Baptist minister Jeff Moore was away playing basketball. When he heard of the tornado, he rushed home to find his family.
Are you all right? Do you live here? Right here. Oh, God. It's gone. Hey. I got a wife and 2 babies.
Okay, you were playing basketball?
I was playing basketball.
Your wife is at the hospital.
More?
Your wife is at the hospital.
Baby?
They're fine. They're at the hospital, too. Okay, she wanted you called down there at Norman to go see her.
The right side of the road when possible at all. This is some, we're running all at the same time. On your marks. And go! There we go!
You know, when most people think of news stories, they think of tragic tornadoes such as the one we just saw in Moore, but how does something like this, a 40-mile run across the Panhandle where you had to be there, you knew it was a planned event, how does that differ visually in its problems and makeup?
The goals are the same in both cases. The idea of film, or what film does best, is not to convey pure information to the viewer, but to let the viewer feel something, to know more about what's out there rather than what he's just seen, but to have some idea of what the people are thinking. This race was an unusual opportunity to get in tight on something it wasn't a spectator situation. No spectator of this race would have ever seen what the camera saw because we were able to follow along. You can see the feet hitting the pavement. The feeling is one of fatigue to show the agony that these people are going through, and yet it's something they volunteered for. Film can work this way in some situations.
What's the difference between film and a photograph, a still picture?
I think the difference is something called continuity, the flow of things. It's a mental process to take the viewer from one place to the other, to take the viewer where the cameraman is and let him see what the cameraman is seeing and what the people that are being photographed or being filmed are thinking.
You know, what I consider to be the best that television can do is to explain this emotional outline of our life a little bit. How do you go about visually explaining one sort of person to another sort of person? You have a person who lives here in Oklahoma City, for instance, and you may go out to Leedy or McAllister or Hartshorn, find someone who is doing something that may be a little unusual or maybe just very ordinary, like, well, like playing dominoes or something.
You have to know the person, and in journalism, I think especially in film, because it's so immediate, you're given to instant analysis, not really instant. You meet a person, you have to learn to know the person very quickly, and you do this by talking to them, and I guess you kind of have to like people, but you sit down with them, you talk to them, and there was a situation, you mentioned the dominoes, where it's not an important story. It's 3 old men that play dominoes under a tree every day. And you sit and you play dominoes with them. If that's their thing, is to play dominoes, then you play dominoes, because you find out what motivates them.
Need 15. That's too many. Come on, Abe. Yeah.
Meet Mr. Pinckney, Boots Moore, Donald Patton, Tom Phillips. Most any day of the week, you'll find them here, as they have been for the past 12 years.
Another good shot.
Well, they're not always here. They like to move the table to catch the warmth of the sun, and that's a momentary thing.
Hello, little Ben. Are you in the
By
car?
summer, the men will seek the shade of Tom Phillips' cedar tree, and at night, the game continues under the mosquito sparks of a corner street lamp.
See who eat the cabbage this time.
In Hartshorn, they play with candidate dominoes. Some man, wanting some office, donated the set. Mr. Pinckney says he lost. They play dominoes with a vengeance. If you ask them who is the all-time winner, they don't recall.
Come on, brother.
Maybe they all are.
That kind of brings back memories, doesn't it?
The story was a lot of fun.
You know, sometimes when I think of all the stories that we've done, and you know, so much of what you do for television is kind of written on the wind. It's not there. You know, you work at it 6 o'clock, 10 o'clock, and the next day is another story. What do you do when you don't have time, as you obviously did on the dominoes bit, to sit and think about a story, you know, and you've got to decide the visual elements quickly, become a visual reporter in a breaking news situation? How do you handle that?
Panic very quickly. No, it's, you know, in television, the idea is to know that you're not going to be able to say everything in a story. You're not going to be able to tell the people everything that is going on. And yet you have an obligation to give them information, and that the information that you give them should tell them enough that they know enough about the situation that they understand it. And you have to go in, you have to isolate parts of it, and you pick out what may not necessarily be the most important part of a situation, but something that is going to illustrate a point. And in a situation where you have no control, you have to find it very quickly. Sometimes you're wrong. Hopefully, as you get more experience, you're going to be right. We've gone to McAllister a lot of times to film in the prison, which is always a frightening situation because there's so much control, obviously because of the security problems. But with the constant tours and guided tours and people milling through, there was a situation of a lawmakers or district attorneys tour there several years ago where it was panicky for a while because we knew it was going to be a hodgepodge situation, which is one where you were with me.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the judges and district attorneys spent last night inside the state prison at McAllister. They were actually dressed in, given numbers and jobs, and encouraged to mingle with the regular inmates. The session was designed to sensitize those who work with justice to what prison life is really like, and conference officials felt the best way to learn about that was from the experts. Most of them were out in the yard. Cleveland County District Attorney Preston Trimble was assigned to the yard. He soon found there wasn't much work, so he did like the other inmates and wandered about. His guide happened to be black, and he took the DA to a corner of Big Mac where most white inmates never go. Out of the sight of prison hosts, Preston Trimble learned some things.
Now you say, how much you think I'm going to learn while I'm in here? Well, man, I don't know where to go. I've never been here before. Tell him where to take me.
Take you off in the cell house. Take you down in the hole.
You can believe we're going everywhere, so it's our rule.
Take you off in the so-called industries.
Right.
Okay.
Now, you asked what I was going to
District Attorney's assistant.
No, wait a minute. Right. So we started through the yard. I walked around this way, and there were, and every 10 feet, some guy would stop me and say, I want to talk to you about something. Right. Okay, I heard about weed row, about the medical facilities, about the hole, about the brickyard. Now, what happened? I come out here, I listen to you guys. I've had, how many people are here? 20? 20 guys? I've talked to how many? 30 guys? Okay, I talked to 30 guys. Well, I'm not stupid. I can figure out with 30 guys what all the gripes are. So I've got a chance then to say to somebody about it. You can't tell anybody how you're a con, you're supposed to bitch.
It is possible to learn a great deal about prisons in 24 hours. It is more difficult to learn much about doing time when your time is so brief. This is Bob Dotson reporting from the state prison at McAlester, Oklahoma.
Many times you hear the NQ of the reporter, but in that situation it was the camera that really told the story.
Well, it's a combination of reporter and camera, where in our situation at WKY, where the reporter and the photographer both work with film, you both have a feeling. Hopefully the photographer understands the story and the reporter understands the film at the same time, because film's a cumulative thing. It's the combination of the image, the continuity, the sound, the information. It's a word that consists
Is
of
it
all that.
important for the photographer to take more than just pictures to tell the story just the same as a reporter?
Well, you have
Would you say that's a shortcoming sometimes in our industry, where you just go out and shoot random shots, put them together, but they don't really build towards anything?
What's the major shortcoming of the industry, and it happens everywhere, because film is an instant thing. It's happening while you're there, and you have to get it. You don't have the benefit that the reporter has of being able to look at it in retrospect. So you can't always understand. You can only hope that you do. The major problem, as in the prison situation, is the presence of the camera, because the camera creates its own reality. If I had any wish, it'd be to be invisible and have the camera invisible, you know, so that I could walk around and I could come much closer to filming reality. The alternative is you have to make people at ease around you. And the prison situation was quick, but you had something going on. The question is, would that have really happened if the camera hadn't been there? I think it would have, because for a while the people were conscious of us, but as they got into their rap session, they forgot about the camera. Sometimes it's more difficult. There are situations where, on a feature where the camera is going to cause a problem, and you overcome it by staying around a long time, letting them see you, letting them get used to you, where you become one of the crowd.
I remember last fall you went to Manco, Oklahoma to do homecoming, which of course there is much more than 11 boys on a football field.
Well, this is it's a story I'd wanted to do for a long time, because one of the reasons I like television is you can do things that aren't that important sometimes, and football is in Oklahoma.
I repeat, I would like that you have a little bit of a competitive, highly competitive attitude tonight in front of your home fans. There's going to be a lot of things that's going to make the ball game almost seem anticlimactic. But to me, it's not the floats and it's not the homecoming queen and everything that's important about this. It's the game of football that's important to me as a coach. And I hope, and it certainly should be, important to you.
Carry the ball. It's the Eagles on the Bulldogs on their own 12-yard line.
Go, right there, go! Go!
Field goal, field goal. 46-yard line.
Bart, do you ever worry about working so close to the emotional edge on some of these stories?
Yeah, you worry about it because sometimes it's an embarrassing point where these people had lost a football game and were obviously upset. I knew that it was making pretty good film when I did it, and you feel a little guilty, I guess, that what you've done in this situation may have succeeded somewhat, and while their endeavor for the night hasn't. But if the object of television is to show people to people, then you have to show all aspects of people to people.
Sometimes you can't work too close.
Sometimes there are barriers between you and your subject. Sometimes there are emotional barriers, and sometimes there are actually physical barriers.
Gunther Gable Williams is the center of attention, Ringling Brothers' Barnum and Bailey show, regardless of which ring he's in. A master handler of animals for 25 years, Gunther devotes his talents to 12 Bengal tigers, the largest act of its kind in the world. The perils of his job are obvious, but not always mixed with the roar of the crowd. It is here, before a small daily gathering of co-workers, that Gunther Gable Williams earns his title as world's greatest animal tamer. Each morning, Gunther holds school, a ring full of playful one-year-olds. Mere youngsters that could rip away a man's arm without trying. The danger is ever present, but masked by the frolicking of young cats. These tigers will someday be a part of the great Bengal act, but now their reactions are highly unpredictable, even to a man who understands them better than anyone else. The emphasis is not on tricks, but on patience. It is in practice
not under the spotlight, where Gunther is most vulnerable to what could be a deadly instinctive reaction by untrained tigers. A man-animal relationship of the highest order is required, a blend of gentleness, sternness, and rewards, punctuated with a constant stream of German commands. The mutual respect is highly visible, a matchup of moods and motions. Those outside the tiger cage can't fully appreciate it. When the big top and the posters come down, Gunther Williams will still be in the center ring, performing the best act yet. This is Ron Turner.
Is it difficult working with animals?
It's very difficult working with animals because they don't understand. You can't tell an animal to pay no attention to you or to, would you mind looking over this way
You
for
have
a
no
second?
control over the set.
Right. I've had bad experiences with animals. I flinch a little bit whenever there's an animal story. I may be the only man in the world that's been attacked by an enraged mother baboon in the middle of the Kansas plains.
What happened?
I covered a story one time of a man on a farm who kept strange animals. By strange animals, I thought he meant he had pheasants, he had llamas, he had camels, and while he's out getting some feed or something, I made friends with a small, strange-looking monkey who turned out to be the reason he was strange-looking is he wasn't a monkey, he was a baboon. And his mother took serious affront to the fact that she didn't think I was treating the small baboon as well as she thought I should.
He called you Darrell and you called him Mr. Baboon.
It ended up the only thing that saved me from the baboon is the baboon was fascinated by the sound of a camera. And I would point the camera at the baboon while it was walking towards me, going into graphic detail what she was going to do when she caught me. When I went back to the office, nobody believed me that I'd been attacked by a baboon until they looked, I had little clips on the film, because I was shooting the baboon like I would be a pistol, with little clips of this baboon with the teeth hanging out. I stay away from baboon and monkey stories if I can.
That's when it helps to have two people, I guess, huh?
It helps in a lot of situations. Film is a thought process, and the more people you have thinking along the same line, the better you're going to have it. Several months ago, there was a situation in Frederick, Oklahoma, a racial situation that had taken months to develop. Dick Nelson and I were set down to cover the story in less than a day, and it's an example of where thought helps.
Let's take a look at it.
Frederick, Oklahoma, a friendly town of 6,000 persons, is not a place where one would expect racial problems normally associated with urban schools. But it has had racial problems, and yesterday the long simmering tension produced violence at Frederick High School. Today there were no classes. Although there were no serious injuries, a dozen police officers, chemical repellent spray, and warning shots fired in the air were required to quell the disturbance. According to school officials, students were out of school today for a cooling off period.
The very next time there's trouble at Frederick High School or any other school or any other public place in the city of Frederick, there's going to be whatever force brought in to stop this nonsense, and I don't care who gets in trouble. And I say again, I'm not mad at a single one of you. I love every one of you. I represent you as mayor, and it's my duty, if all else fails, to try to sit down and talk some sense to you.
At a meeting of parents and students to talk out the problem, black students complained that punishment at the school is not administered equally. But some whites said they were the ones who were punished more harshly. School Superintendent Prather Brown said the important thing is for school to get going again.
The children deserve it and need it and must have it. And it's going to take a lot of work and a lot of understanding. We've got to put aside some of our either huge prejudices or petty gripes. We've got to quit threatening each other.
At several points, today's meeting erupted in shouting. There were no immediate solutions, and it was clear that feelings and tension are still high in Frederick. But as black and white hands joined in prayer, the tensions were temporarily set aside.
To realize that it's going to take a spiritual revolution in the hearts and minds of our citizens of this country to realize and respect themselves and the rights of others. May we all learn to live together that does not regard color, creed, or kind, or religion, but thou seest man as we live together as American citizens.
Classes at Frederick High School resume on Monday. This is Dick Nelson reporting.
Well, Darrell, I noticed you didn't have any interviews in that particular story. You didn't have a reporter standing up in front of Frederick High School telling people about a complicated issue. Now, many things that we deal with are not visual, but other things, perhaps with a little bit of thought, can be made to be visual, at least if you're looking for it. Do you agree with that statement?
I think so. I think that since you're dealing with a visual medium, that you have an obligation to tell every story that you can as visually as possible. It's difficult. What it boils down to is you're going to have to structure a story. You're going to have to break a story down in a beginning, a middle, and an end, and within that framework decide what is important in the story. It's the same thing a writer does, to decide the important points since you can't cover it all. The situation that we had several years back, I think it's 2 or 3 years ago, at an Indian school, which the school was threatened with being closed down. It's a very complicated situation. The easy way, but I don't think it would have worked as well, this is one that you and I did, would have been to interview somebody to have them tell the problem. But I think we were able to tell more by structuring a story, letting the people at the same time they got information understand visually what goes on at Riverside Indian School.
When the Quakers came to Anadarko, this is what they saw. But they knew even in 1871 that the red man must learn to live in the white man's world. That was why Riverside Indian School began. And that's why it may not last another 100 years.
This particular acid is very corrosive, and it involves a reaction between...
There are those who say that tom-toms and test tubes don't mix, that there should no more be an all-Indian high school than an all-black high school. But Superintendent Dick Whitesell disagrees.
I think an awful lot of our education, not only public school, we could also say private school, and some bureau schools are geared towards the middle of the group, whereas the best students don't get all of the attention they need or the instruction they need, nor do the lower students. If a student cannot communicate, he's in need of special education.
That communications problem can be extreme. There are many bright students at Riverside, but their aptitude scores on public school tests don't always reflect their ability to learn. They straddle the thin tightrope between two cultures, and Riverside makes it just a bit easier. And so it's been 100 years since that first class on Sugar Creek opened to teach the white man's way. Those who celebrate today attest to the school's success. But the world outside is changing, and the kids in their classrooms are changing with it. They still seek an identity with the past, but their promise is with the future. At Riverside, the promise and the past are one. This is Bob Dotson reporting from Anadarko, Oklahoma.
You ever worry about having to deal with reality in all your films? You ever want to be a Hollywood producer?
Oh yeah, there are times, you know, you think that I ought to put the beret on it, be Cecil B. DeMille, and just where you could have control and say what you want to say without worrying about what the people are really going to do. And it's not journalism, but it's kind of fun sometimes.
Where you could bring in a cast, instruct them on how you wanted to do a certain thing, and have them do it, right? Without having to deal with everyday people.
Yeah, every once in a while you get the opportunity to do it, even you can't call it a news situation, but it runs in a news program. It's a bit of fluff that we do. I guess you would call it fluff. You take kids or people and just illustrate a situation that everybody knows happens, everybody knows is the way things really are, except if you went out to find it, just to pick it up at random, it wouldn't be there, but you can make it happen.
The county library has sent bookmarkers for all of you to have and encourage you to use the library this summer. Please, people, we would like your desks to be clean and clear of all your things and all your litter. Please do not open your folders until you get home, because sure as shooting you'll leave some of it on the sidewalk if you do. Those of you who had as many as 25 books on your reading cards, you did not receive reading certificates. Is there anyone who doesn't have a paper sack to take your things home? School will begin, I believe, the 28th of August.
What's wrong? Nothing to do.
You had a lot of fun with that one, didn't you?
Oh yeah, it's a lot of fun. I don't know if that was done several years back. I don't know if I'd do the same thing again. I'm probably more inhibited now than I was then.
Well, what about this staging? Do you think that going in to recreate a certain reality may warp it a bit by your own either insights or shortcomings, as we indicated in the opening of the program?
Sure, it's going to warp it a little bit, or as you say, warp, but the only thing you have to guide you is it fair? You know you're not going to be objective. There's no such thing as being objective. And as long as you stick to the key words there, if you're going to recreate reality, you're not going to get in very much trouble, because as long as you're not changing, as long as you can look at it and say, I honestly think this is how it really is, then you're pretty much on the right path.
You're dealing with the same decisions any type of reporter has to deal with
right,
day by day, right?
A reporter chooses the words that he's going to use to say something, and the cameraman, the visual communicator, chooses the shots, the framework, what exists in that little rectangle to tell a story.
What's the most difficult story you've ever had to cover?
Well, it'd be a series of stories, actually, and it would be when you and I went to the Olympics several years back. Which,
yes, I recall. That wasn't...
it was... No. We got to the Olympics through some lack of communication somewhere. We found ourselves in Munich unable to go to any of the Olympic Games. We couldn't go in the Olympic Village. And yet we were responsible. Let's face it, we had spent a lot of the company's money, and you can deal with idealism all you want to, but there are times that you have to produce because somebody's paying you to produce.
That's right.
And, you find small little victories, 50 Boy Scouts in a Boy Scout camp, and you find out they're all from Oklahoma City, or the wife of an Oklahoma athlete. But every story in Munich was so difficult because we didn't speak the language. We didn't know our way around. Things that we could set up and do in 2 hours in Oklahoma City would take a day.
Yeah, I recall that Bob Berry had to do some interviews, obviously, with Oklahoma athletes, and he didn't have credentials to get in to see them. And then with Abe Lemons, you remember, he went in and got track shoes on and then kind of marched in with some of the athletes like he was a coach.
Right.
And got, some of the athletes that...
Well, we set up our studio for interviews was a lawn chair outside of a beer garden right outside the Olympic Village. You know.
And one of us would circle around in a car all day long while the other was shooting, right?
But stories that would come back, and this is a result of good editing when they came back here, a story that would look very simple on the air as if it went very smoothly, might have taken a full day and a half to produce, not to shoot, but just to find the place and to get there and to understand what parking garage means in German, and to be able to park the car, find out that the sun goes down at 4:30 in the afternoon and you have to start all over again.
Well, I remember an afternoon when we spent wandering around, well, practically most of the day with one of the athletes' wives.
The Olympics is rough on an athlete's wife. Husbands are boxed in the glass and steel while all Munich sits like a child on a storyteller's knee. The guidebook beckons, but the husbands can't go. Barbara Wells' husband is an Olympic wrestler from Norman, Oklahoma. He's been in training this past week and unable to wander Munich's side roads to history. Barbara is not allowed to stay with him, so she's filled her time looking around. In Old Town Munich, the pages of yesterday are measured out in greening copper and gold. For Munich has been crowned with a gold medal of its own, presented each evening when the sun burns yellow above the stuccoed walls. It's quite a sight, and one Barbara hopes to share with Wayne once the Olympics is over. This is a special time for Barbara. This will be Wayne's last bout, a happy, sad time in many ways. The years of rooting, of hoping, of laughing, crying, turn the corner with the passing torch of the Olympics. And then Wayne will be free to wander the streets in search of yesterday. Guidebooks are okay, but they don't squeeze back. And beauty doesn't bring joy unless it can be shared. Bob Berry will be back with more Olympic coverage right after this message.
If Bob Berry had his druthers, he wouldn't be back. You know, we mentioned just before we saw this piece here about some of the problems in Munich. You know, we hear people talk about the magic of film, not just news film. Obviously, they're talking about Hollywood in most cases. And that is when all the emotional elements come together to play perfectly. But as you've shown us, it's kind of a technical hassle. How do you, in a period of 2 to 3 hours with a microphone that may go dead or something like that, come back with the story? What are some of the problems that you might come across?
Well, a story that works means that that everything didn't go wrong. It means only a few things went wrong.
Right.
Because if you have a mic cord strung out, you can just almost guarantee that you're going to have a buzz in it. If you have a light set up, somebody's going to trip over it and knock it down. The bulb's going to burn out. The camera's going to start making noise. And you get almost paranoid because you begin to think that the machine gods are after you, you know, because they fight you. And the only thing that you can do is fight them back, you know, and you sit and you wrestle them and hope that maybe you've overcome everything. And you have to force yourself into difficult situations, knowing, you know, that if you climb up on top of a building that you're probably going to have to climb back down again and get the roll of film that you lost, or go down and get the spare battery pack to operate the camera.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, now you've gotten yourself into some unusual positions to cover stories.
Well, a lot of times you can, just to get a shot, just being in a different place can help. If you can get up high on a building will help, or get down low. You know, a lot of times it seems like it's more gymnastics than it is photography.
Anything you won't do for a story?
I won't jump out of an airplane for a story.
Why not?
As I said, I don't like high things and places and things that bite. I get nervous on thick carpets. But I'll climb up on a building if I have to for a story. For 83 years, the Sisters of Mercy have led children into St. Joseph's School. There was only a tent there in 1891, when it was the first school in Oklahoma City. A frame schoolhouse came later. But for the past 66 years, the nuns have led morning prayers in this building at the corner of 5th and Harvey Street.
Someday I'll go to heaven. Jesus said I would.
Jesus would not send the children away, he said. Let the little children come to me, and do not send them away, for God's home is in heaven.
There were only 4 teachers this year for less than 100 students. If you ask the nuns, they would tell you that they are sad. The school will be torn down next month to make way for urban renewal and an office building. But life goes on, and Friday was a school day.
After your reading, there's always a comma, Joy Lynn. Come on, put a comma after dear grandmother. That's the sass. Don't keep your number. I have to join circle. Good girl.
T-H-A-T?
Swing that girl, that good little girl, swing around with the whale, and everybody, one and all, swing your hand in the hall. Swing on, boys, swing.
There were few outward signs of sadness when the last students left school last Friday. Perhaps because the only things the wrecking crew will really bring an end to are bricks and mortar. The things that are truly important at 5th and Harvey Streets, and have been since 1891, will continue. This is Darrell Barton reporting.
How does it feel for a man who worked with a camera to have to be a reporter once in a while?
I enjoy it, but I started as purely a camera and purely a photographer, and there are times that I just like to get excited by the images and shapes and forms and just the geometry of how they fit into the rectangle that you work with. I like that film as well as anything I've ever done, and it doesn't mean a thing.
How'd you do it?
It's magic.
Well, it's different. You did that in about 2 hours, too, didn't you?
Yeah, I got the urge one night to go out and do something. I started about 7 o'clock and got it on the air at 10, and 10 o'clock airman just looked at it and says, okay. You know, it fills up a few minutes in the newscast anyway.
You know, lots of times we have to do that.
Certainly do.
It's surprising, but sometimes we do. You know, this is probably, this next story that we're going to show, it runs about 10 minutes long, and it'll be the end of the program, but it's probably what most folks tuned in for to begin with. At least on the surface, this has got to be our most pleasant assignment in 5 years, right?
Well, we had a lot of complaints from the other people in the newsroom, the single people in the newsroom who really thought they ought to cover it, but I think it took two old married men like us to really get the,
That's right,
the proper perspective on this.
You know, you have to call your wife and tell them that you're doing research.
Right.
Lots of research. It's one of these kinds of stories. What we're talking about, folks, is a singles program that's going to end out this particular portion of Spectrum. And News Film Cameraman of the Year, Darrell Barton, was the man who shot this. I held his microphone and his lights and got tangled in his cords. But what this deals with is the single explosion, both in America and here in Oklahoma. There are 48 million single people here in the United States. 12 million of them are between the ages of 20 and 34. And collectively, they have about a $40 billion spending power. Now, that's a lot of statistics, but what that tells us is that there's a story there, and we sure had a lot of fun covering it.
It all began innocently enough. An out-of-work perfume salesman in New York decided the best way to meet girls in his neighborhood would be to buy a beer joint, fix it up with Tiffany lamps, and advertise for swinging singles. 1 week later, the place was packed halter-top to bell-bottoms, and an industry was born. That was 9 years ago. And since then, the young singles population in this country has increased a whopping 50%. Almost everywhere you go today, there are businesses geared to filling the unwed's every whim.
Known as our white coochie. Remember white coochie? Remember when your mother used to go coochie coochie coo? That's where they got the name, by Arthur Richards. Coochie coochie coo.
Got the 350 L87 option engines, mag wheels, radial tires. This car is still in factory warranty. It has 5,000 original miles on it. It is a one-owner car. And if you're looking for a fine automobile, and this is sure be one of the best that we have to offer as far as our used car selection goes.
Turntable, auxiliaries, 2 4-channels, whatever type of input you want to put into it.
In less than 10 years, 100,000 singles-only apartment complexes have been built throughout the nation.
That's a good way to get known around the place, around the city.
Love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
I like to boogie a lot, like different girls, likes a lot of them. I don't plan on getting married.
Like I said, doing my own thing, boogieing, having a good time.
Being able to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
Life's too short, and there's too many mountains to climb and rivers to cross and promises to keep.
There's practically not one day, unless they're too tired. They're having not a party some kind. It's not always the whole
Such places reflect a curious contradiction in single psychology. Residents proclaim themselves liberated while they choose to enroll in a regimented, almost paternalistic lifestyle. And their days are filled with round-the-clock activity overseen by a motherly social manager like Sasha Corday.
You're over 21. So long you're single. You've got to be legally single. Bye-bye. I practically don't do anything. When people come in here, ask for an apartment, they're coming in and we usually, you know, people open up. They tell you a little bit what's what. So let's face it, we have bachelors here, widowers here, and a lot of divorced people. Well, when somebody is divorced, what do they lose usually? Their friends, right? So they lose their friends from before because, well, most of the friends they had probably, they were all married people or young married couples, right? So they're a little bit uprooted. When they feel the warmth, automatically they open up. You don't have to push. Of course, you have here and there a few people which are not mixing well. Some, the girls or the guys come in and say, now, you know, who's living over there? You know, they're sticking too much in the apartment. I say, all right, go and pull them out. It will be nice. You know, once they come to one first party and get to know somebody, No trouble whatsoever.
Midnight at the Oasis, send your camel to bed. Shadows painting our faces, traces of romance in our heads. Heaven's holding a half moon, shining just for us. Let's slip off to a sand dune real soon. Kick up a little dust. Come on, cactus is our friend. He'll point out the way. Come on, till the evening ends. Till the evening ends. You don't have to answer. There's no need to speak. I'll be your belly dancer, prancer, and you can be my sheep. Oh, come on, come on. Oh, come Suffering was the only thing made me feel I was alive. Thought that's just how much it cost to survive in this world. Haven't got time for the pain. I haven't got room for the pain. I haven't got need for the pain.
The accelerating divorce rate has brought swarms of young converts into the singles fold, where they now tend to remain for far longer periods of time. And indeed, the number of under 35s who have been divorced and not remarried is more than double the figure a decade ago. Many of them find solace in the tangling talk of a singles bar. The modus operandi in such places is as structured as the mating rituals of an Aborigine tribe.
I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me. When you hold me in your arms so tight, you let me know everything's alright. I'm hooked on a feeling. I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. Lips as sweet as candy, its taste is on my mind. Girl, you got me thirsty for another cup of wine.
It is essential to build just the right eye contact before rendezvous and docking. And it helps to know the right approach.
Wink a little, smile a lot. About it, yeah. That's all it takes.
You know, when a girl's wanting to meet you or not, you know, they're going to let you know. They'll make a move toward you, same as you would for a girl, you know.
If they don't want a boogie, I'll go on to the next one.
All the good love when we're all alone. Keep it up, girl. Yeah, you turn me on. I'm hooked on a feeling. I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. I'm hooked on a feeling. And I'm high on believing that you're in love with me. I said I'm hooked on a feeling.
It is no revelation that the physically unattractive and the socially shy find the singles game a never-ending round of rejection. But what does surprise is the unhappiness among the very singles who appear to be living the Mary Tyler Moore life. Therein lies the dark side of the singles world. There are players who score and those who strike out. And yet for both, there seems to be a sobering degree of loneliness built into the rules.
I know some of you here tonight know the Lord Jesus.
Churches in Oklahoma help fill the gap for some, but church attendance among young people is down, and their number is up. Most congregations are finding themselves having to adapt to the new morality to attract those in need.
Man, is he just a Lone Ranger type character that you call on when you're in trouble? Or is he somebody that's real and living and vivid? And he said,
our society has given the young a number of options, lifestyles never dreamed of 10 to 15 years ago. And most now come with money, freedom, and most importantly, respectability for whatever way they choose to live.
It's a serious moment with me. It's not funny. Isn't that right? Amen. Amen.
Great time for you to develop the squeaks camera.
I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong time. I done said the right thing, but it must have used the wrong line. I had the right trip, but it must have used the wrong car. Head is in a bad place, and I wonder what's good for. I've been in the right place, but it must have been the wrong time. My head is in a bad place, but it must have been a good time.
What is that roll of film I had? I brought another roll in with me. I'll be back in just a second.